Under the scorching Lagos sun, the underbridge shimmered like a mirage, blurred by heat and hopelessness. Andrew Jacobs stood at its edge, clutching a single crumpled dollar in his fist. His shirt hung open at the collar, his beard wild, his skin tight from days without shelter. His eyes, once sharp, full of strategy and spreadsheets, now wandered like a man lost in fog. He hesitated in front of the restaurant. It was noisy, full of life that didn't belong to him anymore. He stepped inside. For 1 second, the room went quiet. Then it moved on. People always moved on. Andrew lowered his head and shuffled to the counter. His fingers trembled as he raised a dollar. 1 plate of jollof rice. And water, he said, voice rough. Please, anything you can give. The waitress looked at the note, then at his face. Her silence was heavy. Hold on, she said, and walked away. He stood still. He knew what was coming, what always came. The wait, the silent dismissal, the nothing. A clock on the wall ticked above him, too loud, like time itself was mocking him. He looked down at his shoes, at the dried mud crusting the soles. 1 lace was missing. He had tied the other around his ankle to keep the shoe on. Behind him, a woman closed her laptop gently. She watched him. Navy blue suit, gold earrings, calm face, too composed for this chaotic room. People stole glances at her, but avoided eye contact. They knew her, or thought they did. Bonita Anderson. No one dared to say her name aloud. She raised her hand and called the waitress. Her voice was soft, but clear. Give him jollof rice. Add chicken. Bottle of water. Put on my bill. The waitress nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. Andrew stood there unaware, just waiting for rejection. Then the waitress came back, carrying a hot takeaway box and a coal bottle. She set them down in front of him and pushed the dollar back. Keep it, she said with a smile. Someone already paid. Andrew blinked. He turned. The woman at the window hadn't moved. She just watched. Something cracked inside him. He took the box and walked outside, sitting on a bench under a tree. The smell of hot rice and seasoned meat drifted out as he opened it. His stomach twisted in disbelief. He hadn't tasted food like this in weeks. He took 1 bite, then another, then more. Faster, like it might vanish if he didn't finish it quickly. A shadow appeared beside him. Bonita. She stood with sunlight outlining her like a quiet halo. He hadn't noticed her coming. May I sit? She asked. He wiped his mouth, startled. Nodded. She sat beside him. Not too close, but close enough to make him feel like a person. What happened? She asked softly. How did you become homeless? He stared at the street, where cars passed like they had somewhere to be. Unlike him. My name is Andrew Jacobs. I was a bank manager. 3 years ago, my wife and our twin daughters died in a crash. After that, I couldn't think straight. Missed work. Made bad choices. Got fired. Bills piled up. Lost my apartment. Lost everything. His voice broke on the last word. I ended up here. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. He still saw his daughter's shoes in his dreams. Still heard their laughter echo in empty spaces. Bonita was quiet. She listened. Her hands folded. Her eyes bright, but unreadable. I'm sorry, she said. I know what it's like. He looked at her, confused. My husband ran off with my inheritance, she said. $10 million. Gone. I lost a baby from the stress. Thought it was the end for me. But I started over. I built Bentech from nothing. Just a stubborn heart and a second-hand laptop. He blinked. You built Bentech. She nodded once. The name hit him like a slap. Everyone in Lagos knew it. Bentech was more than a company. It was a symbol of wealth, of success, of second chances. I believe in rebuilding, she said. And I think your time is now, Andrew. He stared at his hands. Greasy, rough, burnt by sun and shame. I can't sit in your car, he said. I'll dirty the seats. Bonita smiled. Cars can be cleaned, she said. People take longer. Let's start. For the first time in years, Andrew saw something like a light. Not in the sky, but inside him. A flicker. Small. Fragile. Hope. He nodded. She stood and held out her hand. He took it slowly. His knees shook. Together, they walked toward a black SUV parked nearby. Heads turned. Andrew paused, looking back at the restaurant. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the crumpled dollar, and held it to the sun. This was supposed to buy me food, he said. Bonita tilted her head. What is it now? He smoothed the note and slid it into his shirt pocket like it was gold. A reminder that the world didn't forget me. Good, she said, smiling. Now get in. He lifted one foot, but didn't finish the motion. Across the street, a man in a faded cap lifted his phone and snapped a picture. Andrew froze. The man raised the phone and whispered something, pointing at the SUV. Another man stepped from the corner, arms folded, watching. Bonita's smile faded. Andrew, she said quietly, do you know those men? He shook his head. No. The man in the cap crossed the street fast. Phone still in hand. Madam Anderson, he said. My boss wants a word. Right now. Everything changed. Andrew stood half in, half out of the car, heart pounding. Bonita stepped between him and the man, voice cool. Who's your boss? She asked. The man smirked. He said you'd recognize the name. Chief Okafor. Andrew saw it. The flicker of alarm in her eyes. She knew the name. She turned, her voice sharp. Tell your boss I don't do meetings on sidewalks. If he has business, he knows where to send it. The man grinned wider. He says you've ignored him too long. Today, you listen. A second man appeared beside the SUV. Larger, unsmiling. Together, they blocked the street. Andrew's grip tightened around the food container. It was still warm. He had just tasted life again, and already it was being threatened. Bonita exhaled slowly. Then, from the restaurant, a tall waiter burst out, holding a tray like a weapon. You want trouble here? He barked. Move before I call police. The two men hesitated. A few phones were out now. People watching. Filming. Attention was dangerous in Lagos. The man in the cap stepped back. This isn't over, Madam Anderson, he said. My boss always gets what he wants. Then they slipped away into the crowd. Andrew sagged. Relief hit like a wave. Who was that? He whispered. Bonita didn't answer right away. She opened the SUV door. We'll talk later, she said. Not here. He got in, holding the dollar and the food like anchors. As they drove off, Andrew stared out the window. The city passed in a blur. He had stepped into a new life. But danger had followed, and he didn't know why. The SUV sliced through the streets of Lagos, its black frame polished like a promise. Inside, Andrew sat stiffly, his hands resting on the food container, now cold in his lap. His other hand kept brushing his pocket, checking, confirming the dollar was still there. He hadn't spoken since the encounter. Neither had Bonita, but her silence was different. It was sharp, measured, the kind that thinks 3 steps ahead. When they turned onto a quieter street, Andrew finally broke the silence. Who is Chief Okafor? Her eyes didn't leave the road. A man who likes owning things, including people. Andrew shifted. And now me? She glanced at him. No, me. You're just the excuse. The answer landed heavy. It meant whatever had just begun wasn't about Andrew at all, but he was in it now, like it or not. The car pulled up outside a small strip of businesses. Barber shop, tailor, shoe store. Come on, Bonita said. He followed her into the barber shop. The air was cool, humming with quiet music. A man behind the chair looked up, recognized Bonita immediately, and straightened. Madam, he said. Bonita smiled faintly. He needs a fresh start. Andrew sat in the chair like it might collapse under him. The barber draped the cape over him, and the buzzing began. As tufts of his hair fell to the floor, Andrew watched his reflection shift, slowly, steadily, like watching a ghost come back to life. His beard shrank. His jaw reappeared. His eyes, haunted for so long, suddenly looked awake. He barely blinked. Couldn't. When the cut was done, he sat in silence, staring at himself. He didn't recognize the man, but he wanted to. Bonita paid in cash without flinching. The barber thanked her like she was royalty. Next stop, the tailor next door. Inside, cool air and racks of suits greeted them. A shopkeeper eyed Andrew cautiously until Bonita said one word, fit him. Suddenly, Andrew was standing on a small platform. Measuring tape looped around his neck, arms stretched out. The tailor muttered approvals as he studied fabric, shoulder width, sleeve length. The navy blue suit they chose hugged him properly, made him stand taller without thinking. Andrew stared at himself in the mirror. For years, his reflection had lived in puddles and cracked windows. Now he stood under proper lights, in clothes that didn't smell of rain and concrete. He touched the lapel gently. Is this really me? Bonita leaned on the counter behind him. You look like someone ready to take the world back. He tried to thank her, but the words choked halfway up. The shopkeeper nodded. This one fits well. Sharp man. Bonita handed over her card without blinking. Andrew pulled the dollar from his pocket. Please, he said, barely audible. Let me give this. At least. Bonita reached over and closed his fingers around it. Not this time. Keep it. One day you'll look at it and remember how far you've come. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Outside, the sun had mellowed into gold. The SUV waited, its paint catching the last of the light. Andrew climbed in, not as a beggar, but not yet as a man sure of his place. Where now? He asked. Home, Bonita said simply. He blinked. Home, yes. She didn't elaborate. The name dropped like thunder a minute later. Banana Island. He froze. She was serious. Banana Island, the most expensive neighborhood in Lagos. A place of silent gates and armed security. He had once driven past it with his wife and daughters, pointing at the glass mansions with a laugh, saying one day. Now he was driving in, not in fantasy, in her car. The guards at the gate barely glanced before letting them through. They knew Bonita's vehicle, knew she didn't stop to explain herself. When her mansion appeared, Andrew forgot how to breathe. Glass walls, a fountain, a lawn too green to be real. Bonita stepped out like she did this every day. Because she did. Come, she said. This is your fresh start. Inside, marble floors, high ceilings, chandeliers like floating stars. The air smelled of jasmine and chilled wealth. Andrew stood frozen, his small plastic bag of clothes sagging in his hand. I don't belong here, he whispered. Bonita turned sharply. Don't say that again. You belong where life gives you a chance. And right now, it's giving you one, through me. You hear? He nodded fast. She softened. Good. Tomorrow, you're coming to Bentec. We'll see where you fit. The word Bentec twisted his stomach into knots. Could he really work again? Could he focus? Could he survive? But she was already walking away. You're a banker, right? She called over her shoulder. Numbers don't forget people who respect them. I need that. Dinner was quiet. A chef brought pepper soup and rice. Andrew ate slowly, trying not to look like someone who used to eat from trash bins. Bonita ate across from him, graceful, quiet. Her eyes thoughtful, watching. Afterward, they stepped onto the balcony. The city sparkled across the water. Boats moved in the dark like whispers. Andrew leaned on the railing. No smell of dust or sewage. Just sea air. Bonita stood beside him. You know why I stopped today? She asked. He turned. No, because you reminded me of myself, she said. Lost, angry, alone, but still breathing. And if you're breathing, there's still hope. He gripped the railing tighter. I don't know how to thank you. She looked at him, her voice lower. Don't. Just prove me right. They stood in silence. Then her phone buzzed. She turned to check it, and her face darkened. Andrew stepped closer. What's wrong? She held the screen out. A photo. Him and Bonita walking toward the SUV outside the restaurant. Below it, you can hide him in your mansion, but you can't hide from us. Andrew's heart dropped. Okafor, Bonita muttered. He's not backing off. Andrew's mouth was dry. He's watching us? Bonita locked her phone, her jaw hard. She walked back to the balcony edge, staring at the dark horizon. Tomorrow, she said, her voice steel. You start at Bentec. But Andrew, she turned to him. This is bigger than both of us. Be ready. He nodded slowly, but inside something twisted. He had found a second chance, but the shadows hadn't disappeared. They had simply changed shape and stepped closer. The morning light spilled over Banana Island with a quiet luxury only the rich ever notice. Inside a guest room bigger than most apartments, Andrew Jacobs stood still in front of a mirror, holding his breath. He was wearing a navy blue suit. Not just any suit. His suit, fitted for him, pressed and sharp. It made him look like someone who still had a career, a name, a place in the world. But his hands trembled. He didn't feel like the man in the mirror. Not yet. His fingers adjusted the knot on his new tie for the third time. Too tight, too loose, too much. He had tied hundreds of ties in his life before. Back when his little girls used to laugh and race to kiss him before work. That life felt like a different person's story now. A knock on the door made him jump. Bonita stepped inside, dressed in a gray skirt suit, sleek as ever, her expression unreadable. "You ready?" she asked. Andrew gave a stiff nod. "Yes, Ma. I mean Bonita." She smiled faintly. "Good. First rule, don't call me Ma in the office. Just Bonita. No special treatment. No distance." "Yes, Bonita." "Better." They walked side by side through the marble hallway and down to the waiting SUV. The driver opened the door without a word. The ride began smooth and silent, sliding past trimmed hedges and security gates. Andrew sat upright, knees pressed together like a child in church. His palms were slick with sweat. He rubbed them on his pants, trying to breathe. "Relax," Bonita said gently. "I haven't worked in years," he whispered. "What if I've forgotten everything?" "You haven't. What if I mess up?" "You won't." He turned to look at her. "How do you know?" She met his eyes. "Because you're still here. You survived worse than this. Now you just have to show up." That was all she said. But somehow it was enough. The SUV pulled up in front of Benteka's headquarters, a tall glass tower that seemed to touch the sky. Andrew stared up at the silver letters glowing above the entrance. Bentek. People in suits streamed in and out. No one looked lost. No one looked like him. He swallowed hard. Inside, the lobby glistened. Marble floors, LED walls flashing graphs, and press releases. Andrew barely noticed. He followed Bonita like a shadow. Every glance from an employee felt like a spotlight. He wanted to disappear. She led him to the elevator. The ride up felt longer than it was. When the doors opened, they stepped into the accounts floor. Cool air, rows of desks, low chatter, and the sound of fingers typing like rain. Heads turned. Bonita walked to the center of the room and raised her voice just enough. "Good morning." The staff answered like students. "Good morning, Ma. This is Mr. Andrew Jacobs," she said. "He's joining the accounts team today. He brings years of banking experience. Treat him with the same respect as anyone here. Learn from him. Help him learn." She turned to Andrew, lowered her voice. "Make me proud." Then she walked away, heels clicking. Andrew stood still, surrounded by eyes. Some curious, some cold, some already judging. A tall man in glasses walked up, stiff posture, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Balagon," he said, "accounts department lead. Let's get started." He led Andrew to a desk. The computer was already on. Folders waited beside the monitor. Andrew sat, clicked open the first file, and froze. The spreadsheet swam before his eyes. Numbers, columns, balances. It was all familiar, but not friendly. He blinked, breathed. His hands were shaking, not from fear of numbers. He loved numbers, but from memory. The last time he sat at a desk like this, everything had gone wrong. He had made a mistake, missed a decimal, lost millions. The bank had buried him. He had buried himself. Now here he was again. One file, one shot. He stared at the numbers until they stopped spinning. Then he started working, line by line, cell by cell. And slowly, it returned. The rhythm, the structure, the way the numbers told stories if you look close enough. By noon, he had flagged 3 inconsistencies in the reports, quietly corrected errors, suggested an improvement to the budget sheet's layout. Mr. Balagon passed behind him, glanced at the screen, and paused. "You caught that?" he asked. "Yes," Andrew said. "The projection formula skips 1 column. It throws off the last quarter's totals." The manager raised an eyebrow. Sharp. The room's atmosphere changed. No longer a ghost, Andrew was becoming visible. By lunchtime, 2 younger analysts approached him. "Sir, you really used to be a bank manager?" He nodded. "Yes, before." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They nodded like they understood. At 5 p.m., Bonita returned. Calm, silent. She scanned the floor like a general reviewing troops. She walked straight to Andrew's desk. Before she could speak, Balagon stepped forward. "He did well," he said. "Spotted things my team missed." Bonita didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "I knew he would." She turned to Andrew. "Let's go." As they reached the SUV, the driver handed her something. A folded piece of thick paper. No name, no envelope. Bonita unfolded it. Her expression turned to stone. Andrew leaned closer. The note read, "This is your last warning. Stay away from him, or you'll regret it." Andrew's stomach clenched. "They know I'm here," he said quietly. "They've always known. Maybe I should." "No." Bonita snapped, her voice steel. "Don't say it." He looked at her. "You don't understand. I bring trouble with me. They're using me to get to you. And I'm using you to remind myself why I fight," she said, eyes fierce. "So no, you're not leaving. Not unless you choose to." He didn't respond, but he didn't argue either. That night, they sat on the balcony again. The water shimmered below. Lagos glowed like a broken jewel in the distance. Bonita sipped tea. Andrew sat with his hands folded tight. "I don't know what this is," he said finally, "or where it's going." "Neither do I. Why are you helping me?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone helped me once," she said, "and I didn't deserve it. I was angry, bitter, but one act of kindness pulled me back." Andrew looked at her. "You still believe in people?" She nodded slowly. "Not all of them, but sometimes one is enough." The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was warm, like a blanket on a cold night. Andrew leaned back, closed his eyes for a moment. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. Weeks passed like waves, sometimes calm, sometimes crashing. But one thing was clear. Andrew Jacobs wasn't the man who had stood outside that restaurant with $1 in his hand. At Bintech, he became a quiet force. He didn't speak much, but when he did, people listened. His spreadsheets balanced like poetry. His projections were sharp. And slowly, even the skeptics in the office began to respect the man with the past they didn't fully understand. Mr. Balagon, once distant, now called him into meetings. Others sought his advice. No one mentioned the note left on the SUV. But Andrew didn't forget it. Neither did Bonita. Every morning, she was composed. Every evening, her eyes watched shadows. But at night, on the balcony, under city lights, they talked. Not about Okafor, not about threats, about their dead. Andrew spoke of his daughters, how they would fight over who got the bigger teddy bear, how they used to play with bubbles in the bath and call him their superhero. His voice would tremble, but he never stopped. Bonita listened. Always. She shared her own grief. The betrayal. The hospital room. The night her baby stopped moving. "I thought I deserved it," she admitted once, eyes on the horizon. "I thought losing everything was punishment." Andrew said nothing. He just sat beside her, close enough to be heard without speaking. One evening, she came home to find him in the kitchen. He wore an apron 2 sizes too small and stood beside a frying pan, fighting with oil. "Don't come in," he said, panicking. "I think I'm losing." Bonita laughed. "Are you frying plantain or burning down my house?" "I was trying to thank you," he said. But the plantain started fighting back. She walked over, gently took the spatula from his hand, and showed him how to flip the slices without setting off the smoke alarm. Their hands touched. For 1 second, they didn't pull away. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Later that night, they sat outside again, the plate of unevenly fried plantain between them. Bonita picked up a burnt one. "You know this is a crime in some countries." Andrew smiled. "But you're eating it. I'm investing in your growth." They laughed, real laughter this time, not the careful kind. And just like that, something began to change. They didn't name it. Not yet. But it grew. 2 months passed. The note stopped, but the tension didn't. Bonita moved through the world like a woman at war with unseen hands. Still, Bintech thrived. And so did Andrew. At a company dinner under chandeliers and soft music, Bonita stood at the center of the room and gave a toast. Her voice was strong, confident, but her eyes kept finding Andrew. And he, heart thudding, understood something. He was falling in love with the woman who had saved his life and let him save his own name. He had been carrying a ring in his pocket for a week. Not flashy, not expensive, a diamond on a silver band, bought quietly, saved for in small amounts. It had taken him weeks to afford it. He had almost proposed 3 times. But fear always won, until the night it rained. The sky broke open just as they stepped onto the balcony. They didn't retreat. They stood there, watching the droplets dance down the glass railing, listening to the water hum against the roof. Bonita's hair began to curl from the damp. Andrew's shirt clung to his back. She spoke first. Do you ever think about starting over? Not just work. I mean, really starting over. His hand went into his pocket. I do, he said softly. She gave a nervous laugh. Because if I'm honest, I think about us. About you. He dropped to one knee on the soaked tile. She froze. Bonita Anderson, he said, voice shaking. You picked me up when the world threw me away. You fed me, clothed me, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Will you marry me? For a long second, she didn't move. Then she knelt, too, rain in her hair, eyes full. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Andrew. Yes. They stayed like that, two soaked, broken, mended people, holding on to something stronger than fear. 2 months later, Lagos paused for their wedding. It wasn't the most expensive wedding the city had seen, but it might have been the most watched. Business moguls, journalists, government figures filled the event center. Bonita walked down the aisle in a gown that shimmered like morning dew. Andrew, in a navy suit tailored to perfection, waited for her with shaking hands. When the pastor declared them husband and wife, Andrew took the microphone. He spoke quietly, but the room held its breath. A few years ago, he said, I stood outside a restaurant with nothing but $1. I had lost my wife, my daughters, and all reason to go on. I was starving, alone, and ready to give up. Bonita Anderson gave me food that day, but she gave me more than that. She gave me a second chance. And today, I'm not just marrying her. I'm marrying the woman who reminded me that I still had a story to live. The hall was silent. Then came applause. Then came tears. Bonita held him tight and whispered, I love you. Married life wasn't perfect. The doctors told them children might not be possible. It broke them in ways they didn't speak of. Some nights, Bonita cried in his arms, whispering, maybe this is the price for my past. Andrew would hold her tighter and say, no, our story isn't finished yet. And he was right. 5 years after the wedding, on a quiet Sunday morning, Bonita walked up to him in their kitchen. She placed his hand on her belly. He froze. She was crying, but smiling. Andrew, she whispered, I'm pregnant. He dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to her stomach, weeping. When their daughter was born, they named her Amora. It meant grace. And when Andrew held her for the first time, he whispered, I thought I had lost everything. But because of one act of kindness, I found everything. Bonita leaned against him. Told you, she said with a soft smile. There's still life after everything. The day Amora Jacobs turned 1, the sun rose like a blessing. Not gentle, not quiet, but bold like it was announcing something. The house on Banana Island buzzed with movement. Balloons floated near the high ceilings. Staff moved between rooms, setting up the backyard. Laughter came from the kitchen. And in the middle of it all, Andrew Jacobs stood still, watching his daughter wobble across the living room floor. 1 foot, then another. She was slow, unsure, just like he had been once. But she moved, kept moving. He blinked back tears. Careful, he said softly, walking beside her, ready to catch her if she fell. Bonita appeared in the doorway, barefoot, holding a cup of tea and smiling. She's you, she said. Andrew looked at her. No, she's everything I never thought I'd see again. Bonita walked over, kissed his cheek, and whispered, we made it. But they both knew it wasn't entirely true. Because even as the laughter filled the house, there were scars that hadn't healed. Not fully. And outside the house, the shadow of Chief Okafor still lingered. For years, he had tried. Bribes, threats, sabotage. He wanted Bentek, wanted Bonita to bend. She never did. Andrew never asked for the details, but he could see it in her eyes after meetings. In the way she checked the locks. The way she moved her company's funds with the care of someone expecting a thief to knock twice. But she never fell, and neither did he. Together, they weathered every quiet storm. Until one morning, years later, Andrew sat at his desk in Bentek's top floor, sorting through reports, when his phone buzzed. It was Bonita. Come to the boardroom. Now. He didn't hesitate. Inside, he found her standing at the head of the table. Several executives sat around her. The room felt cold. Heavy. Okafor's finally done it, she said. He made an offer no one's ever dared before. Silence. Andrew looked at her. What kind of offer? Her voice was calm, but her hands were clenched. He wants to merge, not take over. Merge. 50-50. The room shifted. Some of the executives looked intrigued. One man cleared his throat. It could mean expansion, new capital, a global footprint. Bonita didn't look away from Andrew. Or it means giving him a door. And once he's in, he never leaves. Andrew stepped forward. Do you trust him? She scoffed. No. Then you already know. She nodded slowly. And right there in front of her board, she said, then it's a no. Let him fight. We won't bend. The decision sparked headlines. Stock dips. Internal whispering. But Bonita didn't flinch. Neither did Andrew. They stood at the helm of the company like two captains back-to-back in a storm. And the storm passed. Years later, people would say that moment marked Benteca's rise from a regional giant to a global one. But for Andrew, that day was about something else entirely. It was about standing beside someone who had once handed him rice and water when he was invisible, and now stood with him when the stakes were everything. By their 10th wedding anniversary, they had built more than a company. They had built a life. Their daughter Amora had her mother's sharp eyes and her father's quiet heart. She liked numbers, asked too many questions, wrote little poems in the corners of her homework. She once asked Andrew, Daddy, do you believe in magic? He smiled. No, he said, but I believe in miracles. That night, after Amora had gone to sleep, Andrew opened an old wooden box he kept hidden in the back of his wardrobe. Inside was a single item, the crumpled dollar, still flattened, still worn. Bonita came in quietly and sat beside him. You still keep that? She asked. He nodded. It's the only thing I owned the day you met me. He held it up to the light. This was supposed to buy me food, but instead it bought me you. Bonita leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. They stayed there quiet, watching the dollar turn gold in the lamplight. Outside, the city roared and laughed and raced forward. But inside that house, the man who had once lost everything sat beside the woman who had saved him, not with charity, but with belief. And in that silence, a truth settled. Sometimes the world breaks you. Sometimes it buries you. But sometimes on a hot day, under a loud ceiling fan, with a dollar and a quiet prayer, it starts to put you back together. Not all at once, but just enough to begin again.